Hi there, I'm Justin Pritchard, and in this video, we're going for a spin in an electric Jaguar. This is the new I-PACE, and unlike all Jaguars before it, it's an electric vehicle, or EV, like a Leaf or a Bolt or a Tesla. It has no engine, it's not a hybrid, and you couldn't put gas in this thing if you wanted to. A full battery gets you 377 kilometers of driving in perfect conditions on a 2-week test drive in Sudbury in the middle of February. The cold weather and my use of the electric heater made it about 240 kilometers instead. Ideally, you recharge on a level 2 home charger, like this one that I had installed to power up all of the EVs I'll be reviewing in the coming years. Plug in at night and she's full by morning, preheated off of grid power and ready to go. Depending on where you live, you'll find public charging stations too. Some are level 2 like mine. Others are these level 3 DC fast chargers, which can recharge the battery from nearly empty to nearly full in about an hour, or add a few dozen kilometers of range in just a few minutes. So you just plug it into charge and then you drive it around. And of course, you've got to mind how far you can go and where you'll plug in to recharge and how long that will take. But the idea is that you just take little sips of electricity whenever possible, charge it at home overnight, and then just drive the I-PACE around. Because charging in batteries and EV range aside, it works just like a regular car, except it's one that never needs an oil change and one that never needs to go to the gas station unless you're after some Tostitos and a pack of Peter Jacksons. Right now, the EV isn't for everyone. They can't drive as far as a cheaper gasoline-powered car. It can be hard to find a place to charge them, which can take a while, and when it gets cold, you'll need to charge more often. Owners do their homework and see if and how this will all work out for them and whether any changes may be required to lifestyle or travel habits. But aside from the range and recharging, actually driving and living with this machine poses almost nothing new to get used to. It looks like a mix between a crossover and a sports coupe. It's a gorgeous collection of curves and angles, and you get 4 doors with pop-out handles, a motorized tailgate, a generous cargo hold, and room for 4 adults and their things, no problem. Just watch your head getting into that rear seat. The cabin is gorgeous, bright and open and airy with plenty of glass. Upscale materials are assembled with expert attention to detail, and there's an authentically rich feel to just about everything, and the leather is so fragrant you'll smell it on your clothes the next day. Glossy finish and touch screens and futuristic controls make it 1 part Jag, 1 part USS Enterprise. It's a comfortable, relaxing place to be with great scenery all around you. Here's a cabin that fully pulls its weight towards the vehicle's price tag. The ignition and gear selector are push button and it's easy peasy to drive. The I-PACE decelerates more aggressively than a normal car when you fully release the throttle, and the brake feel is a little more mushy and vague than what you're probably used to. That's fairly standard stuff in electrified and electric vehicles. Beyond that, if you can drive a car, you'll feel right at home in here in 2 minutes. Smooth sailing on the highway. The air suspension all but eliminates excessive body motions to the benefit of a smooth ride over almost anything. Just watch the potholes with these big 20-inch wheels. You can even lift the I-PACE for more ground clearance, say in deep snow, at the tap of a button. It's luxury sedan quiet too, other than a few more squeaks and creaks from the interior paneling than I like when it's cold. What's under the hood? Well, nothing interesting since the action happens down lower. A 90 kilowatt-hour battery is structurally embedded into the floor, and it feeds an electric motor on either end. One drives the front wheels and one drives the rear. So this is electric all-wheel drive, and I've driven a few all-wheel drive cars. And I can tell you that this one, without the constraints of gear sets and diffs and clutches, is much faster and much more precise to respond when the going gets slippery. The slow motion footage reveals the fine control of the power delivery, and from the driver's seat, don't expect any issues with traction if you've got good winter tires on. And while that big flat battery in the floor lowers the center of gravity to the benefit of stability, the I-PACE is happy to send a few more volts to that rear motor in dynamic mode if you'd care for some noiseless electric slip and slide action. And if there's anyone who still lives in Narnia and thinks that electric cars are gutless, then the I-PACE begs to differ. You get 394 horsepower and 512 pounds of torque, and with no transmission, no power curve, drive shafts or pulleys, or a complicated mass of reciprocating parts to slow things down, the only thing between the power delivery and the road are the wheels. And with electric direct drive, the power applied to the wheels can go from 0 to 100% as quickly as you can change the current flow to an electric motor, which is to say immediately. The acceleration is surreal. It'll do 0 to 60 in about 4.5, in virtual silence, no gear shifts, no interruption, and the fastest acceleration that I-PACE can give you arrives fully the millisecond your foot hits the carpet. Nothing with a gas engine that I've ever driven responds this immediately. It accelerates like a monorail, gently flattening your eyeballs, and all you hear is the sound of the air passing over the body and the tires pulling over the road. Even the very best gasoline luxury performance powertrains have nothing on this for massive torque and virtually silent operation. In the cold, the door handles can get fussy, but they always worked. It takes a minute longer to warm up than a regular car, but I was able to stay warm easily, even down to 20 below with the heat on, and the heated seats and heated steering wheel and rear defroster are not the most powerful I've ever used, but they ultimately work just fine. In challenging winter conditions with proper tires, the I-PACE performs as well as you'd expect in terms of braking, accelerating, and just feeling comfortable in the snow. No reason to leave it parked, even when the roads are bad. Wintertime or otherwise, and again, it just drives the way a luxury sport crossover should. Gripes were mostly minor. I wish the central climate controls were a little less flashy and a little more straightforward. And though this I-PACE accelerates like a photon torpedo, the feel of the controls lacks the pure precision needed to impress a die-hard driving enthusiast. It's fast as heck, but more comfy than sporty at the tips of your fingers and toes. So, a smoother and quieter and far more responsive thing to drive than almost anything I've ever driven. And aside from the charging and distance constraints posed by my locale, there's not that much compromise for making the switch to electric here. Even in the dead of winter, I woke up every morning to a fully charged battery and more than enough range to handle my daily running around or shorter road trips no problem. And sailing on by every single gas station never gets boring. But I personally wouldn't buy one of these just yet living up this way. Now, this wouldn't work as an everyday vehicle for me given the climate and charging infrastructure of Northern Ontario right now. Simply, some trips just aren't possible if there's insufficient charging along the way, and if there is, then long trips become even longer since recharging fully can take an hour or even several. But this would make a seriously cool around town runabout or second car, and with just a few more quick charge stations up this way and maybe 100 kilometers more range from the battery, then something like this would become very, very feasible for someone like me. Now, for where and how I drive, it's not quite there yet, but man, oh man, it's coming fast, and I'm very excited to see where things go in the next couple of years. So, a brave and remarkable new Jaguar, and also a swanky and fast crossover that you just drive, provided that you've got the recharging stuff sorted. Interesting times ahead, since the EV is only going to get better from here as more automakers like Jaguar join the game. Pricing from $90,000. Thanks for watching.